I didn't, but I could have just as well. I'm telling you, I read it this morning. But again, happy Mother's Day to everyone. I have a slide here. This is, I guess I should, how are we doing? Am I good, Shannon? Okay. This is the name of the talk today. Mother's Day look at the divine, feminine, and masculine within. And you'll see why. And I'd like to say again, Happy Mother's Day to all of you who are mothers, also whose mothers are elsewhere, like mine, and whose mothers are with us in spirit and aren't physically here, but we know they're here, and we love them, and they love us. And also for those who mothered us, like grandmothers. Anybody here live with their grandparents at all? Yeah, me too. I lived with my grandparents for 3 years at one time. Perhaps you had aunts who mothered you, or great aunts, stepmothers maybe. And I'd like to also honor the mothers who mothered us unknowingly. Fathers maybe, friends, partners. I had a weeping willow one time. I was 8 years old. And I got a lot of comfort from that tree. I got to get down in there, and the things, you know, they hung down and no one could see me, and it was a really great place, great space for me to be. Maybe yours is Reverend Fillmore, or Louise Hay, or Maya Angelou, or Betty White, or Mrs. Doubtfire. Hey, how about Mrs. Weasley, Tammy, huh? Mr. Rogers, maybe. Mr. Rogers, some of us. And of course, the Divine Mother within. You know, what some mothers go through, it's something. My own mother was whisked off to a strange town, hours away from her family by her husband, my dad, when they got married. And there she was with strangers, in-laws, probably seemed strange to her. And you know, I have a slide here. Let me take that and move that out of the way. That's my mom and me. You know, she nearly died having me. She was barely a young woman, a teenager, when she had me. And, you know, there are over 700 women who die every day in childbirth. And there's been a 200% increase in that since 1994. Can you get over that? That's something. You know, there's nothing about the scenario that I can look at and say it wasn't traumatic. But, you know, and I looked at it and I thought, wow, you know. So I called her and I said, hey, Mom, who mothered you? You know, who was taking care of you, you know, at that time? And so she said, well, you know, your Grandma Mary and your great Aunt Georgie, they were nurses, and they took care of me. So, you know, it made me feel good to know that that happened. And of course, great Aunt Georgie is still taking care of me today. You know, there are other mothers who have similar stories. Thank you. And words alone can't express our gratitude. Can we get this in just a second? Thanks. We're going to get that. We're going to get more of that, but because I want to tell you what they are. Throughout her story, I'm going to say, moms had it pretty rough, you know. But there's a secret here, and the secret is that mothers are more than sugar and spice and everything nice. You know, mothers also have frogs and snails and puppy dog tails. Moms are tough. You know, there's a balance in there of the divine within. And, you know, they move from doubt to doubting doubt, and from that to being willing to be willing. So that's what happens. You know, after 30 years of living in Tucson, my mom and my stepfather, who was my stepfather for over 40 years at the time, they moved back to Missouri to be around family, both his and hers. You know, and it was just a few years ago he made his transition. Well, as you can imagine, people wondered how she was going to make it. The Missouri family was worried. You know, they said, well, you know, what's she going to do? He did all the driving, he did all the grocery shopping, he did most of the cooking. And, you know, it wasn't easy. It isn't easy. She reaches for the daily word. You know, she's taken self-care up to a whole new level. You know, and people meant well in their concern. You know, there wasn't any doubt about that. But this woman, who decades earlier had taken a motorcycle maintenance course so she could maintain her own motorcycles, surprised them all. She drives, she orders groceries online and goes and gets them. She's not afraid to ask for help when she needs it. You know, her full-on gumption is returning. And she's growing and stretching in every area of your life, and she's growing spiritually as she incorporates both the male and the female aspects within her. So I'd like to say that moms are resilient, but they are human, even if some seem to have ears that hear long distance, eyes in the back of their heads, and telepathic hearts. I got this from an Australian website. This daughter asked her mother, "What's it like to have the greatest daughter in the world?" And the mom answers, "I don't know, dear. You'd have to ask your grandma." And mother says to her son, "I'm warning you, if you fall out of that tree and break both your legs, don't come running to me." You know, we all need resilience, and I want to pause here to acknowledge the fact that not all mothers are motherly. You know, even here among us, some may have had addict, alcoholic mothers. Somehow, some other way they were absent, or even abusive. And I want to acknowledge that, because sometimes for people like that, Mother's Day can be a rough day, you know, and I want to acknowledge that. But you know, we do find mothers in other ways. We mother, as we talked about before. And you may have mothered yourself, or found mothers elsewhere, like in a TV mom, maybe Mrs. Brady, or maybe a big sister, or an aunt, or a kind neighbor. And now let's see those pictures of those critters, if you don't mind. Now these are unlikely mothers. These are unlikely mothers mothering others, literally. You have I don't know if you can see it well with the light, but up on the upper left there's a gorilla with a kitten, right? And then in the middle you have a husky and a meerkat. And there's a girl with her duck. You may have seen stories about her on CBS, the girl with the duck. The duck imprinted on this girl, and the girl has been for years mothering this duck. And then we have the most unlikely, I thought, was the tortoise and the hippo. So the tortoise is the mom, and treating the hippo as her baby. And then on the far right, you have the Dalmatian with what is known as the rare spotted lamb. Isn't that something? You know, so if you're finding your mothers and you're mothering elsewhere, whether it be a person or a thing or the divine mother within, you know, don't think you're the only one out there that's, you know, that's a little different. Or maybe a little more the same. Am I finished there? No. So I'd also like to take this moment to acknowledge all the dog mamas and the cat mamas that we have today, because that's an important thing. And you know, most of us are wearing their hair, so it's hard to, you know. So I'd like to introduce, I should say, a woman who is known as the mother. Her name is Amma, and we have a couple here who have actually met her, but I will tell you about her. There it tries to stay on there, doesn't she? Alrighty. Now, Amma, look at the smile, and Daniel and Jane here have actually met her at a conference that she had, or a coming together situation there. You know, as a young girl, she drew attention to herself because she meditated deeply for hours on end at the seashore. And she also sang, she composed these songs, and she had a beautiful voice, and the songs were beautiful, and she drew attention because she sang them out loud to God, to the divine. And the other thing that drew her attention to her was the fact that she was giving these divine, loving, motherly hugs. And she was still a girl. As you can imagine, society and family Moors weren't exactly thrilled with this. And she also crossed castes, the caste system doing this. And so she said she followed her heart. And she writes, a continuous stream of love flows from me to all of creation. This is my inborn nature. The duty of a doctor is to treat patients. In the same way, my duty is to console those who are suffering. She says, love expressed is compassion, and it's no surprise that her charities are called Embracing the World. And these are pictures that I got from her website and Facebook page. If you want to see more about her charities, you can go on there. Excuse me. I'd like to see the next slide, please. And there's Myrtle. Myrtle Fillmore, the mother of unity. And she actually was a mother too. She had some children, and some of them wrote books and gave some talks, and you can find all that online and at the Unity websites. There's lots of information about it. You know, Myrtle was inspired by a spiritual experience that when she heard this Dr. E.B. Weeks speak, and we talked about this one week, how that Dr. E.B. Weeks from Chicago, Illinois was giving this lecture on healing, and this one sentence got to her. I'm a child of God, and therefore I do not inherit sickness. I do not inherit sickness. This was such a spiritual experience for her. She had this experience that met every cell of her body. It was such an overwhelming experience that she and Charles were so impacted by it that they started the Unity movement. Now, this may seem like, okay, that's good history, but can you imagine listening to one sentence and then going out and starting a movement? I mean, yeah, really. But they did, and thank God and Goddess they did. Huh? So, Myrtle continued her healing work, not just on herself, but through, she taught and she inspired others through her writing, and also onto their own healing paths. And she does this today still. People are still being inspired by Myrtle Fillmore on their own healing paths. And now I'd like to move to another slide, and this is about Mary. Now, most of us don't think about Mary as a little girl, do we? There's a rendition, or a rendering, I should say, of Mary as a little girl. This book, which you can't see as well, or maybe you can from your angle, is written by a French woman. Her name is Helena Bernard, and she describes how Mary's mother, Anne, who later became Saint Anne, and her father, Joachim, who was the high priest of the Essene Temple of Helios in Jerusalem. Now, in case you weren't up on your Essenes, the Essenes were the ancient Jewish sect that were active between the 2nd century AD and into the 1st or 2nd century BC, depending on what you read. They were highly regarded, highly respected, highly organized, property owners, and they were also regarded as the authors of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So that's who these people were. This were her mom and dad. Now, Anne and Joachim knew of the prophecy of the Magi, the coming of Jesus. They had heard this prophecy, and they declared, if as foretold by the Magi, a daughter is born to us, we shall consecrate her to the holy sanctuary. And that's what they did. Anne and Joachim protected and raised Mary within the temple. They ensured her personal safety and her studies, and with her watchful eye and presence, and also of the temple columns, or also known as the temple virgins. And at age 13, Mary became initiated herself as a column in the temple. Later, she was placed in the safekeeping of an Essene widower, a carpenter that was known by the name of Joseph the Galilean. And there's this story, perhaps we can see the next, am I getting ahead of myself? Yes. So there was a story, and what happened was Joachim, the high priest, decided that he was trusting Mary to help weave this part of a curtain for the temple. And as by fate, she chose purple and scarlet, while her lady companions were using other colors. And while she was weaving this curtain, piece of the curtain for the temple, the archangel Gabriel came to her. You see this picture rendered by Leonardo da Vinci And he says to her, it's time to fulfill the Magi's prophecy. Thou shalt conceive through the word of God. Later, the same angel, Gabriel, came to Joseph in a dream to warn him to flee, to save the baby Jesus. So we all know that story. And the point I'd like to make about that is we had an angel that went to Mary, and we had an angel, the same angel, who went to Joseph. And it gives us the male-female aspects of the story. And if you can have the next slide there, you can see how that really shows in their you have the beautiful, look at the love expressed by Joseph to the baby, and also you can see the love and the light in Mary's beautiful Catholic art I found that had, but no name to the artists I couldn't find. Thank you very much. Now, we're going to briefly go back to Ireland. You might remember St. Patrick's Day, when we talked about the goddesses of the Irish, the Tuatha De Danann, and their mother goddesses, and how some of them, we have their picture too. There they are, and they're known to be going in threes. They also have warrior goddesses among them, and the warrior goddesses, if you remember, they possessed male attributes, but they also had the female aspects. And remember, when they went to battle, they didn't fight physically. They used the elements of nature. So you figure wind and rain and hail and floods and whatever had to happen to make sure everything was on the up and up. And that was the Tuatha De Danann. And so now I'm going to take you around the world to other mother goddesses and who personify motherhood, fertility, creation, destruction, and or embody the bounty of earth. The first up is Kuan Yin. Now, some of you may know Kuan Yin. Excuse me. She's the Asian goddess of mercy. And she's known, she's compared by many to Mother Mary. Although that doesn't make everyone happy, but that's the case, that a lot do. You know, her characteristics and this is of course quite different than anyone else. She was originally male, and she evolved into female around the year 1200 AD. And she chose to remain on earth to bring relief to the suffering. And that's where the commonality is, I believe. But beautiful Kuan Yin. Many of us have statues and statuettes of Kuan Yin around our homes. And yeah, you too. Reverend Bonnie has a big one as you enter her home. Beautiful. And next we have African mother goddesses. I'm so pleased to introduce you to these two. I had never heard of them, and I'm so pleased to find them. Aren't they beautiful? The one on the left is Oshun, the African mother goddess of the sweet or fresh waters. And to the right there you see Yamaya, the African mother goddess of salt waters. And they have festivals for these mother goddesses every year. In fact, you can actually go to them here in the United States as well as Africa. In the next slide, I introduced you to someone you probably don't need to be introduced to, and that would be Shakti. Shakti, now, the great divine mother in Hindu, that's what it means, Shakti. Now, look how many arms and hands and things are going on there. Lots of going on in that picture on the left there with Shakti. I have to tell you this story, or this statement. If evolution really works, how come mothers only have two hands? Milton Berle. I guess Milton never met Shakti. In the middle there, you'll see the Greek mother goddess of the earth, Gaia. And that's from a Greek artifact, beautiful Gaia. And we hear that a lot. There's many things named Gaia in honor of the earth today. And then, of course, everyone knows Isis, the Egyptian mother goddess. She's up there on the right. And so the point of me bringing these in is to remind you of the attributes: nature, motherhood, fertility, creation, destruction, and the bounties of earth. We're going to switch gears a little bit here and talk about the divine feminine within us. And, guess what I'm forgetting? There we go. Now we're on this track here. We're almost. I found this, and I'm so pleased to introduce this to you. If you haven't already seen it, I'm very pleased. It came from Truth Unity, you see on the bottom left there. It's a writing from Charles Fillmore from January 16th, 1916. And it's a lesson. It's written, I believe, for a Sunday talk, based on the way and you can find this on Truth Unity yourself. Just look for the Divine Feminine. It was a passionate writing of the Divine Feminine and its importance to our own spirituality, and also to the evolution of the world. And those in here, he writes, "Now I say to my brother man," and he writes this in this writing, "let's get off our high horse. Let us be humble and willing to accept the intuitive word of the Divine Feminine in every affair of our lives. Let us take their intuition, their perception of things into whatever we do, and I assure you, we will achieve success. A restitution of our mind and our will first come." At the time of this writing, January 16th, 1916, we were 2 years into World War I. And President Woodrow Wilson, in January of that year, was making his efforts to organize a peace conference in Europe. And the very day that Charles wrote this, the French General Sorel assumed the command of the Allied forces in the town of Salonika in northern Greece. And if you know your Jewish history, which I didn't, you may recognize the name of this town, Salonika, for what happened to it in World War II. Now, in this writing, Fillmore says, "We are told that Adam fell into a deep sleep and Eve was taken out of his side. It came to me the other day that maybe Adam is still sleeping and it is time for him to wake up. Supposing that the love and the peace and the justice and honesty of women, the righteousness of women, were today in the hearts and minds of the people in Europe, do you think they would fight? Certainly not. Would there be war? Certainly not." That's what he said. He implores that you look within to the high priest. Now that high priest is what he called your highest concept of spiritual things. So that high priest within, to your own high priest within. And listen to that high priest within, and to be meek and humble enough to recognize the knowledge, understanding, and inner perception held by women. Earlier in the lesson, Charles Fillmore writes, "Know that God created you in his image and likeness, male and female. And there is a marriage of spirit, the masculine and feminine, those qualities which exist in being, and they are united in the human family." Also happening at this time, and had been happening, but was still happening, and was going to be happening a little more, was the women's suffrage movement. You remember that? Well, not personally, but we do. So, and he writes about that in this same lesson. He says, "There must be a lifting up into the realm of intuition, of love, of tenderness, those qualities which belong supremely to the woman. We can see that this movement is becoming universal. Women's suffrage is a larger expression in human affairs of the feminine, and has back of it a great truth." Suffragists, they would get up on soapboxes and train cars, whatever they had to do to be heard. They did whatever they had to do to get to be heard. And so, in some cases, they were arrested and worse. And you see, and so these women made quite the impression on him, as well as many, many others. And here's one that was part of that, and her name was Elizabeth Cady Stanton. She was a suffragist leader and also an abolitionist, which often went hand in hand. She was on this earth plane between the years of 1815 and 1902. Can't help but wonder if she's not still wandering around a little bit and whispering in ears, don't you? She said this: "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal." She also said this, which you know I love: "Self-development is a higher duty than self-sacrifice." Now, metaphysically, the male and the female are also present in all of our bodies. Physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. In order to grow spiritually, we all need that balance of the male and the female aspects, spiritual aspects within us. Now, there's no surprise to me that today's increase in the outward blurring of gender, when the inner balance of the spiritual female and male within us is evolving, it is also manifesting in our bodies, and not just spiritual, but our mental, emotional, and physical bodies too. In his writing, The Authority of the Divine Feminine Restored, Charles Fillmore talks about the divine law. He says it's buried under great loads of material things. Deep down in human conscience is this wonderful divine law, he says, and it is only revealed when we go and give ourselves up and hold ourselves in spirit, in the spirit of God manifest in masculine and feminine. Today, as we honor the mothers, I ask that we honor the feminine within, in all of us, male or female. Honor that feminine, divine feminine within, in all her magnificence, including those frogs, snails, and puppy dog tails. And reach for the balance within, the balance of the male and female we all inherently have, and own it. Hey, what's the best that can happen? Thank you. Thank you very much. And now let's prepare for a balance of meditation. Thank you. Our Mother, Father, God, we ask that you make us keenly aware of your presence, the masculine and feminine within, the female and male aspects, the spiritual aspects, and every aspect of our life and being, in every bit of us, every cell, so that we recognize that we are in balance. And we feel this energy, this balanced, loving energy around and throughout our bodies. All of our bodies. Mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, all of our bodies. And we feel it here, pulling around our feet, relaxing them and healing them, knowing that they are in balance in every way, flexible and strong, sure-footed in every aspect, through our every thought, words, and action. And as we move this energy up our legs and into our knees, let's pause there for the knees, and we recognize the male and the female, the left and the right, the female and the male, the left and the right, flexible and strong, feeling beautifully healed. Let that healing soak in. Put gobs of that healing energy all around those knees and heal them. Let that balm of healing love enter in and heal to the very cell level. Now let's slowly move that energy, not away, but increased, up our thighs and into our hips. Balance the male and the female We are balanced in every way, and we move forward in life in this balanced, sure-footed way. The male and the female energy, healing and moving us forward as we move into this energy and allow it to move into the base of our spines and move up our spines and around into our lower abdomens. We know that every organ, every cell, every bit is so happy to do its work, and it's doing it perfectly according to our divine feminine and masculine matrix that God instilled in us. And here we are, loving and healing and allowing it to take place in our lower abdomen. And as the energy moves up our spine and into our upper abdomen, we breathe into the solar plexus, that loving, healing energy. We allow the feminine aspect of receptivity to bring more healing. We feel it. We feel it here. Our divine right, our birthright, our inheritance of perfect health. Feel this energy as compassion in our heart. We feel it in the heart, growing this love, this healing love, spreading throughout our chest, the compassion growing and growing into our shoulders, up our arms, from our hands all the way into those shoulders, healing the shoulder, healing the arms, the elbows, so flexible yet strong. Feeling that relaxation in the shoulders and the shoulder muscles as the energy healing moves like waves into the neck, and around to the throat, into that power center there. Healing the throat, feel that energy. Know that our voices are strong and true and kind and loving. We have confidence in those voices. We know that only the highest and best is expressed through them. And this confidence grows, and this loving, compassionate, loving, healing energy grows up around the back of our heads, around our face, relaxing those jaws and the muscles in the face, pausing at those temples, relaxing, healing into the center, the third eye area, relaxing and allowing the receptivity to grow. The more we relax and receive, the more it grows. And so with the other powers of man and women inside of our head and around our head and over our scalps, so that from the tips of our toes to the top of our heads, we are healed. We feel this healing energy, and we know our confidence is equal to our knowing. And every doubt is met with the willingness to be willing, to be confident, to believe, and allow. The more we allow, the more we relax, the more the manifestation. This energy is so strong and filling us so much, growing and growing. It's now touching the person next to you and the person next to them, and filling this entire room so that it explodes out into the streets and out into the city until it circles the whole world, sharing this receptive, loving, healing energy on this Mother's Day, touching every hurtful, sad heart, touching every needful place, knowing that all is filled with love and light and joy. We bring humor, we bring healing, we bring love, we bring beauty. All around the globe, touching every place, here and around the globe, from us, connected with all the others. And we stay connected. We are connected in all ways with the divine within us and with all the others who are adding their energy to this healing moment. There is no time and there's no space. There's only God. Bring the energy now, the awareness, back into your body. Notice where your hands are. Feel the feet on the floor. Bring that gratitude and knowledge and confidence in knowing that that healing has taken place and all is well. Amen. So it is. Thank you, everyone.